Let's bring in Laryssa Waler, conservative strategist at Henley Strategies. So, Laryssa, we've got Doug Ford, we've got Tim Houston. What's your read on what they're saying here about the federal conservatives?
I think that everybody should spend some time knocking on doors and figuring out what quote unquote real conservatives or real Canadians or real Ontarians or real Nova Scotians are worried about. And it's not what Doug Ford and Pierre Poilievre and Tim Houston think about each other. It is about affordability. It is about sovereignty. It is about their manufacturing industries. I know this makes for good political fodder and good political gossip, but there's so much more to talk about. And even in the Doug Ford interview, he was asked a question by a reporter. He didn't lead with it. He didn't just bring it up. So I would love it if everybody could just, move forward.
What about Pierre Poilievre? Do you think he is facing an uncertain future after losing his own seat or not?
I think they're going to keep him as leader for a few reasons. One, conservatives are tired of leadership races. We've had a one and done sort of system. And I don't think that was necessarily fair to our previous leaders either. Aaron O'Toole and Andrew Scheer, I think they probably should have been afforded another shot. But that happened. I just don't think we should do it again and again and again. I think we should build on the momentum that we've made. And I think especially with Pierre Poilievre, he has unlocked new potential voters that have never voted before, or especially have never voted conservative before, by talking about things like affordability, by talking about things of protecting skilled trade jobs, by protecting manufacturing sectors, by really investing in our natural resources, by focusing on our productivity, right? These are things that Canadians have been worried about leading into the election. There are things after all the Donald Trump stuff settles down, and eventually it will. There's going to be these things that still linger on. And I think that these things are the things that Pierre Poilievre has a real pulse on from coast to coast in every community across the country.
Absolutely. We know a big challenge now for Mark Carney will be managing that relationship with Donald Trump. This is just coming into our newsroom, Laryssa, and I want to get your reaction to it. It's Donald Trump at the White House at a cabinet meeting, and he's asked by a reporter about the relationship with Canada and Mark Carney. We're going to play it. It's about a minute long, and then I want to get your reaction to it. Let's listen to that if we can.
Against the Conservatives, but also against you. Yesterday, yesterday he spoke about American betrayal. Are you interested in rebuilding relations with Canada, and if so, how?
No, well, I think we're going to have a great relationship. He called me up yesterday. He said, "Let's make a deal." He was running for office. They both hated Trump, and it was the one that hated Trump, I think, the least that won. I actually think the conservative hated me much more than the so-called liberal. He's a pretty liberal guy. But no, I spoke to him yesterday. Couldn't have been nicer, and I congratulated him. It was a very mixed signal because it's almost even, which makes it very complicated for the country. It's a pretty tight race, but he's a very nice gentleman, and he's going to come to the White House very shortly, within the next week or less.
All right, so a meeting there within the next week or less. Laryssa, your immediate reaction to what the president just said?
So setting my partisanship aside, it's only to Canada's benefit if our Prime Minister has a functional, good relationship with Donald Trump. We can't change geography. We can't change the fact that they're always going to be our biggest trading partner. We have not only business relationships, we have intergovernmental relationships, we have family relationships, friendships. People own land on both sides of the border. So if Donald Trump is willing and has respect for Mark Carney, that is to the benefit of everybody in Canada.
Let me get back to Poilievre, and I wonder, you're coming to us from the Toronto area, and Tim Houston said something interesting when he held his press conference, said there are many shades of blue. In other words, there are a lot of different kinds of conservatives. A conservative in Alberta might be different than a conservative in Ontario or Quebec or, in this case, Nova Scotia. In light of the results on Monday, and I wonder whether you think there may be some of those perhaps progressive conservatives, so to speak, from Ontario, Nova Scotia, elsewhere, who feel that Poilievre was the wrong leader, the wrong messenger, and that there may be an effort in the days and weeks to come to try and pick a new leader. Now, you said that you don't think that's helpful because of what happened with Andrew Scheer and then what happened with Aaron O'Toole, and you don't think it's great to do that to Pierre Poilievre, this so-called one, and you're done. If you lose, you're out. But what do you think we might hear from some of those more progressive conservatives out there?
Yeah, it's not just that I don't feel like I don't think it's a good idea. I don't think the numbers or the data show that it's a good idea. By every measure, if the NDP hadn't cratered in their vote, it would have been essentially a supermajority conservative government, right? At 41, 42%, that's a supermajority conservative government in Canada in a three-party system where the NDP keeps their normal vote share around 15%, 20%, right? But that's not happening. So we have to recalibrate on how do we communicate to the public, who are our new potential voters, and how is the kind of paradigm of political loyalty shifting. That's all okay. What we do know is that Pierre Poilievre got more votes than any modern conservative Bay party, right? We do know that we unlocked a lot of new ridings in Ontario. We came really close, way closer than we thought we would in some downtown Toronto ridings. Those are new conservative voters. So it wouldn't make sense to me to bring in a new leader who has less credibility on things like affordability, on home ownership, on security, on crime. These are things that Pierre Poilievre has been talking about for years. They are things that are still going to be front of mind for millions of Canadians after the Donald Trump thing settles down, and we see it settling down. So I don't know why we would go with a new leader when we have somebody who's really credible on all these really important issues.
And just quickly, he does have a, I would say, fairly strong argument, does he not, to stay on, given the fact that you increased your seat count by, let's say, 25 seats, and the popular vote as well. A lot of fundraising being done, and some of those rallies were huge.
Yeah, I mean, the elephant in the room is he lost his seat, right? If he hadn't lost his seat, nobody would be having any of these discussions. We'd be saying it was a really good showing from the Conservatives. But he lost his seat, and that is just something that the Conservatives are going to have to deal with. There are a bunch of different scenarios on how to get him a seat. Is he going to run in to stay for riding? Those are things that the Conservatives will figure out. They have to figure out who the new interim leader will be in the House. And they'll have to figure out that dynamic, right? Those are sort of internal problems. But I think by and large, Pierre Poilievre and his team put on a great showing. And I can't think of another politician in the country that could ever pull that sort of momentum at those rallies. That is real. Those are people who just really believe in the vision and the priorities of Pierre Poilievre. But as we go forward, again, if we're moving towards a two-party system, the Conservatives are going to have to figure out how do we recalibrate internally to pick up more accessible voters, because now we have to fish in the same pool, but it's kind of different now.
Laryssa Waler with her take, Conservative strategist. Good to see you as always. Thanks for this.